Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of my video. This time we're going to be looking at laying down some drum samples and developing good sounding rhythm through only using a few audio tracks and samples. So let's start by inserting more audio tracks. So you right click, select insert audio track like so. So now I have 4. We'll lower the volume of each so that they're not distorted and don't hurt your ears when you place the sample in there. So I've taken them all down to about -9 to -11 decibels. Again, we want to keep an eye on the spectrum analyzer as we lay these tracks, so we're not overlapping the sound. This is something we discussed in the past tutorial. So if we go into the sidebar, the samples, which we looked at in the past tutorial, let's go into this break sample pack and select some drum hits. So there's all manner of kicks available. The choice is really up to you, what you want to make. I like the sound of this one. It's a bit heavier and deeper. So I click and drag. If I click and hold on this top bar, I can zoom further into our little selected 16-bar loop area. Hit spacebar to play, and there you can hear the kick playing out. So duplicate the sample, either by right-clicking and selecting duplicate, or the hotkey, which I showed you in the last tutorial. The loop is currently sitting at 32 bars, so I'll drag it into 16. And now, as you can hear, there is a kick landing on the beat. So up here we have the BPM of the track. It was at 170. I've lowered it down to 128 by selecting and typing in what I want. You can hear that it is slower. I'll see what it sounds like. Compared to 170. And that's 128 BPMs. So that's beats per minute. 90, again, is even slower, obviously. 140. These are all common BPMs you'll hear across electronic music. 128 is standard for house and techno, thereabouts. So we'll go with this for now. So this bar up the top, you can click and drag to zoom in or out of the timeline. So now let's try find a hi-hat sample. It's all personal preference what you go with. I've selected the standard 808 one. So again, we'll duplicate the hats on this audio track. And let's have a listen. It is a slow process, really, figuring out where you want things to go. So I think I'm just going to put a lot of hats in. Experimenting is a big part of making music. So when you go out, don't select every single sample that you've heard me go. Don't go with the exact same BPM. Sort of follow the steps, but use your own taste and your own preference. So it's sounding a bit more intense. Let's add an audio effect. So the compressor, click and drag on. The compressor itself is a pretty complicated audio effect. It allows you to flatten out sounds. We're going to sidechain it. So select sidechain, and we're looking at audio from audio 1, which is the kick. So this isn't a compressor. Every time the kick hits, it will lower the volume of the hat. And this, as you can hear, creates a bit of a groove in the hat. It's as if I've gone in and automated the volume of every hat where the kick lands and lower the volume of that. So this is a little shortcut to adding some dynamic groove to your hats that work in conjunction with the kicks. So now let's add a clap. So click and drag the auto sample in, shorten it out. So now that I've found where the claps want to go. Sounds good. I use the hotkey to duplicate them, stretch them out across the 16 bars. So one thing that's very important to do is to save as you work on your music. So file save up in the top left here, you name the track. As you would with anything working on a computer, save your work, back it up, because it is a nightmare to lose it. So now that we've got these tracks down, we'll just name them to save any confusion. So you right click, select rename, and name that track. Kick, hi-hat, clap. So we'll add one last sound, a snare, to kind of complete our rhythm. Take some experimenting to find out where you want that sound to go. So again, select the area, duplicate, and fill out that full 16-bar loop. So now that we have a simple but really nice sounding drum loop down, it's time to add some effects. Let's start by adding some reverb to the snare to create some space. Now, if you're considering adding the exact same effect to a number of different drum samples, instead of placing them on each individual audio track, you can place the audio effect on a return track. These little boxes here correspond with the two return tracks that exist currently. I can also add it on my clap. Add it on the hi-hats. So a benefit of doing this is you save processing power on your computer. Ableton can be quite intensive on your computer, it can take a lot of processing power. This is a handy little trick to save your computer becoming chuggy and slow. So distortion is a really nice feature. It adds so much texture and uniqueness. I use a distortion plugin called Isotope Trash 2. So as it's an audio effect, it's just an external one. You can see the interface looks different. I click and drag on like I would out of the audio effects table. This just gives you more options than the Ableton stock distortion audio effects can. You can hear some subtle changes across these. As the snare is a short and fast sound, it's harder to hear these effects completely. But through good headphones and good monitors, you will notice a difference. Let's try add some ping pong effects now to the claps. So the feedback is just how long that sound, that echoed, delayed, duplicated sound plays out. Let's add some erosion as well, make the sound a little bit crustier. So the best way to learn how something affects the sound is just to fiddle around with the dials. Experimenting is a major part of this. It's always good to constantly reference the spectrum analyzer as you work. or turn up the volumes as you go to create a nice balanced sound. So now we're going to look at the EQ here. So the snare is a pretty wide sound. We can bring out certain aspects of it. So I've cut off the low end and turned up a mid-range part of the snare. It gives it more pop. It takes off any unnecessary low sounds that are competing with the kick. Let's add something called the phaser to the hi-hats. Just gives them a more interesting sound. If you're listening to this tutorial through headphones or on good studio monitors, with the phaser applied, you'll hear the sound sort of move around your head a bit. Again, adding to that dynamic effect that we already had going with the side chaining from the compressor. So again, I've added a side chain on the clap, which gives way to the kick. This comes after the ping pong effect, so the ping pong effect isn't playing over the kick. And then I've done the same for the snare. This gives the kick and the snare so the most prominent in the mix. Saturation is another form of distortion. You can hear the difference it makes on the kick. Make the frequencies lower. Sounds a bit gross if you turn the bass up too much. Again, we'll try cut off some of this mid-range area so levels of the kick aren't competing with the snare. Now the kick is sounding chunkier. The sounds of the kick that we want to exist are more prominent, and we've trimmed off any unnecessary sounds. So by examining the spectrum analyzer, we can see there's lots of space below the kick. The human ear can't really hear below 30 and 25 hertz, so there's no point ever really taking a sound below there. So there you have it. Using 4 audio tracks and a small number of effects, we have managed to create quite quickly a really nice sounding drum loop that's got some groove. It's a bit dancey. So I encourage you to go out, try to limit yourself to 4 tracks like this, and limit yourself to the audio effects you use. But explore all the variations, see what you can come up with. And experimentation is a big part of this. So just enjoy yourself, play around, see what you can make. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.